Yeah, so let's kind of go back to the beginning for you because I was taking a look, Jamarial. You are a guy from the state of South Carolina. Um, just kind of talk about, you went to St. Stephen High School. You're from St. Stephen, South Carolina, I should say. Just talk about you coming up as a football player. When did you first find a love for the game? Obviously, you got better and better over your time, and you came up through high school ranks and stuff like that, and then went to a Division II school, which I want to dive into in just a second. But just kind of talk about your overall football career leading up to going into college. What was that like being an in-state guy? Obviously, you eventually end up playing for the Gamecocks, but what was that like for you being that in-state guy? Did you have your eye on South Carolina? Was it Clemson? Like, what was that like coming up for you in the high school ranks?
For sure. Actually, I got a late start playing football. I didn't start playing football until 8th grade. Was the first time I started. And I went to Timberland High School. My high school is actually a combination. A lot of people might have not heard of Timberland, but it's a combination of the old St. Stephen's High School, Macedonia High School, the infamous, and Cane Hoy High School. But I started loving football just because everybody used to tell me that my dad was good at football. And he didn't really force it on me. He just kind of let it flow. If I wanted to play, I could play. And I just told him that I wanted to play one day. And that was around about 8th grade. And I got on the B team football team. And I don't know if everybody knows what B team is, but it's kind of like 7th, 8th grade, if they're not familiar with that. But I wasn't really good when I first started. I didn't really know a lot. My dad taught me a little bit and just kind of eased me into the game. And it took me a while to get the hang of it. So my first year, I didn't really play much. So I went in 9th grade, which is when most guys are going over to junior varsity. And they put me back on B team so that I could kind of develop and learn a little bit. But by that time, I was starting to get the hang of it and figuring it out a little bit. And I pretty much dominated that year, my 9th grade year. So I skipped junior varsity and went over to varsity for Timberland High School. I played there for 3 years from 10th to 12th grade. I started, I believe, 35 or 36 games there. That was a record for a few years, probably 5 or 6 years, I believe. But we had a lot of football background in our town. I'm from a small town called Alvin, South Carolina. Gotcha. It's in the city of St. Stephen's. Most people probably have never heard of it, but during that time frame when I was coming up, we had 3 players from that area, from that small town or that small community that were like nationally known. We had Joe Hamilton, who ended up being a runner-up for the Heisman. He lost to Ron Dane, I believe that was 99/2000. Courtney Brown that same year ended up being drafted number 1 to the Cleveland Browns. And Pearson Prelo, who I believe had the longest out of those 3 career in the NFL. He ended up playing, I believe, like 11 or 12 years, won a Super Bowl with the New Orleans Saints. But those guys were like our idols. Like if you're from that area, those guys were like your idols. So we all wanted to play football. It was a thing. It's ingrained in you almost. But I didn't really get recruited. I was small. I was about 250 pounds when I graduated, an all-state South Carolina offensive lineman. I made all-state at 250 pounds, and I wasn't really recruited much. I don't even know if we had stars back then in 2004. But I remember my name was in a Max Preps book or one of those South Carolina high school books. I don't even remember what our rankings were back then, but I got a scholarship to a small Division II school, as you named earlier. St. Augustine College it was back then. Now it's university. And that's where I started my career at.
No, for sure. So talk about that again. You start out at a D2 school. I'm really curious, Jamarial, just hear your story. You get there and you obviously end up at South Carolina. How did that all come about? What was it like? Because obviously I'll tell you, I relate. I was a guy, I played baseball at Newberry College, a Division II school. So I was a D2 athlete as well. But just talk about that experience at the D2 level and just how did it all come about that led you to South Carolina?
Gotcha. I was definitely a South Carolina fan already. If I had to choose a school, that would have been the school that I chose to go to had I been an athlete that was, highly touted or a blue chip style athlete. My oldest sister at the time, she went to the University of South Carolina to get her master's degree. And she's 10 years older than I am. So I was, on campus a lot. I used to help her move in when she was like one of the housing. I forgot the name of what you call them, but like the people that are like over student housing, they live actually in the dorms. She was one of those people. So I used to help her move in, and we used to go down to the stadium to tailgate and stuff like that. So I just kind of fell in love with Gamecock football from the beginning. It didn't start out as like a pure hate for Clemson. I just didn't really know much about Clemson, so I didn't really care about Clemson. I just fell in love with South Carolina. And because of that, I ended up, by the time I was on varsity, I ended up going to South Carolina's football camp every year. It was just a thing. But yeah, it definitely developed into a pure hatred for Clemson. So that was a good thing. But Yeah, so like I said, I didn't get recruited really, so I ended up going Division II. But from the moment that I stepped on to St. Augustine's College's campus, and it's nothing against St. Aug, nothing against D2 athletes, definitely because, like you said, you've been there, I've been there, and it's a way to get a free education. And if you love it, if you love the game, and that's your only option, that's definitely one of the things that you'll look into. But when I got there, I knew it wasn't the same. Like I said, we're from a small town, so you don't really have a whole lot, going on Friday night is football. So our stadiums, I was used to packed stadiums, standing room only, that type of thing. We went deep into the playoffs every year. They didn't win state until after I left, but we went deep into the playoffs every year. So that was your thing. On the weekend, it was football. And when I got to St. Aug, like it was a program that was being rebuilt, I guess, for a lack of better terms. But they had gone defunct, I believe, in like the late 90s or early 90s. And they brought the program back in 2002. So they were rebuilding. And they had a long way to go, put it like that. Yeah. And I decided relatively quick that I didn't know if I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted that, like, that lifestyle. Like I wanted to feel, what it felt like to be the guys that I saw on TV. Right. So I made up in my mind that I was going to try to transfer at that time. And also at the time, I had a cousin at the University of South Carolina that was a walk-on as well. His name was Gerard June. And I remember going home over our fall break, I believe it was, or Christmas break, one of the two. And I ran into him and I told him that I was thinking about transferring, but I didn't know if I could make it at USC because I wasn't recruited there. So I was kind of, looking down on myself thinking I wasn't good enough. And he was on the team at the time. And I just remember him telling me, he was like, you can play here. So I made up in my mind at that moment that I was going to transfer to South Carolina. So put in my paperwork when I went back, finished out the winter semester, and the rest was history.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember that name, Gerard June. I do. I don't know if that speaks to how many Gamecock athletes I'm so familiar with or what, but no, I definitely do remember that name when he was at South Carolina. But no, it's funny, man, to hear you talk about the D2 experience. Cause I mean, I can certainly relate. And again, like you said, you love the game, you play, whatever, it's your way to get there. But it's a lot different being a D2 athlete than a D1 athlete. Like people don't realize it is way different. Like it's night and day.
It's night and day.
The vibe of it, the feeling, the intensity. I mean, and again, like you said, it's no knock to D2, obviously. I mean, dude, I played with guys that got drafted, that, big time players, whatever. But it is very much so a different vibe and a different feeling and whatever. So we were talking a little bit off air. You were talking about you had a story. You get to the University of South Carolina in 2005, but you're not actually officially on the team until 2007. Just talk about, again, you're getting to South Carolina at a very, very interesting time. Steve Spurrier has just taken over the job. I mean, the buzz around South Carolina football is through the roof. Just kind of walk me through, again, what we were talking about off air. You get there in 05, not on the team till 07. You get to South Carolina, just how that all evolves and, what happened once you got to Columbia.
Gotcha. It was an insane experience, to be honest with you. I came to the University of South Carolina in the summer of 2005 to do, I guess, an official visit. Right. And at the time, like you said, it was an interesting time because I can't remember. I believe Spurrier had already gotten here. I think he came in the spring.
Yeah, he got the job December of 2004, so he'd have been there.
Gotcha. Yeah. So they had already done a whole, spring semester. So it was like a lot of transitioning going on. So honestly, like, I don't even think they paid me much attention when I put in my transfer papers, and I actually, because I was still waiting to be accepted as well. So I was waiting for my spring semester grades to come through, and that took a little while. So I actually got accepted over the summer. So they allowed me to come on campus. I did a visit, like a regular student almost, but they allowed me to come down and actually tour the stadium and talk to some of the coaches and things of that nature. So when I finally arrived on campus, as you might know from which I believe they might be changing this rule soon. I'm not sure, at least for COVID. But if you transferred from a Division II school to a Division I school and you had to sit out for a year, you automatically had to lose a year or use that as your redshirt year. So that was my plan in the beginning. But at the time, I could actually practice like I was actually on the team. I could practice, I could lift weights, I could do everything as a regular member, but I wouldn't be allowed to actually play because I had to sit out for a year. Well, since I was a late enrollee, I got accepted late. I literally got accepted at the end of the summer, like maybe 2 weeks before the semester started. I was waiting like down to the wire. And so I ended up getting a lot of late classes. So at the time, I think his title was Director of Operations. It was Jamie Speronis. You're probably familiar with that name.
Yeah.
he was like Steve Spurrier's right-hand man. For people who don't know, he's been with him from Florida to, Washington and NFL everywhere. I believe since Duke. But big shout out to him. He kind of guided me, on what I need to do and how I need to do it. And Jamie Harrison at the time was over academics, and I forgot I think Maria, I forgot her last name, Maria. She might still be there. Either way, they helped me out a lot. They kind of guided me to what I need to do and how I need to do it. But I ended up getting a lot of late classes because I was a late accepted student. And
right.
They advised me to not drop any of my classes, go ahead and take my class that I need to take since I wasn't officially able to play anyway, and just come in the wintertime. I never actually did a tryout, being a preferred walk-on. I, like most walk-ons, have to go and do this rigorous tryout and everything. I never did any of that. I was already on the team, so long story short.
Forgive me if I missed that. So I'm assuming they saw film from your D2 playing days, and that's where you got the preferred walk. Or how did that work?
And actually, it was so long ago. Like, I don't even know if they actually saw any film. Right. When I decided that I wanted to transfer there, I contacted them, and honestly, it might have just been off of the strength of my cousin being on the team at the time. Right, I don't know, because it was a smooth process, man. Like, they accepted me and they said, yeah, come on, and I was there. And I used to go down to the stadium when I first got on campus. I would go down there and talk to them and, see what I need to do next, see, what were the next steps and everything. And they just kind of helped me in the direction I need to go. But I was advised to not, worry about practicing during that fall. Go ahead and get, take those classes, because that would help put me, even further. Because a lot of people don't realize that you have to have a certain amount of credit hours completed towards your major each year to remain eligible for sports. A lot of people think you just go to school, you pass a couple classes, and you can stay on the team. Right. But you have to be a certain percentage towards completion of your degree. And they thought it'd be a good idea for me to go ahead and continue doing that. And that didn't work out. USC was such a beautiful experience, but I had never had that much freedom in my lifetime. I went to a small school. My school was Division III at the time. I think they're 1A now. So that's a testament to how small it was and is. And then I went to St. Augustine's University, and I believe it was 950 people on campus. When I came to the University of South Carolina, my first psychology class had like 350 people in it.